If you drive through the Texas Panhandle on the Interstate, you're doing it wrong. Just south of I-40, you'll find the second largest canyon in the United States, a string of picturesque small towns, and a sprawling state park full of bison. What you won't find: traffic, convoys, or noise. So unless you're a long-haul trucker with places to be, let's exit the interstate in Amarillo and head south to Palo Duro Canyon, where the flat panhandle suddenly drops away. Palo Duro is often listed as the second largest canyon in the United States, which I don't fully understand because it isn't especially deep. It's just enormous. The canyon stretches 120 miles long and 20 miles wide in places. It's basically a massive scar carved into the middle of an otherwise pancake flat landscape. At around 800 feet deep, Palo Duro isn't going to give you vertigo. For comparison, Arizona's Grand Canyon is over a mile deep. So no, you're not standing on the rim wondering if you're about to fall into the earth. What makes Palo Duro strange, and honestly kind of fascinating, isn't how deep it is, but how wide it is. This canyon wasn't formed by some sudden, violent geological event. It was carved slowly and patiently by the Prairie Dogtown fork of the Red River, cutting through soft sediment over millions of years. Instead of creating a dramatic, vertical drop, the river quietly spread outward, forming a massive horizontal canyon. Palo Duro is awe-inspiring nonetheless, mainly because it's so unexpected. You drive across the treeless panhandle where the plains feel like they'll go on forever. You round a bend, and suddenly, there's a giant red gash in the earth, towering rock formations, caves, ravines, and then, almost just as suddenly, flat land again on the other side. This unusual geography creates an oasis on the plains, and has long attracted humans and animals. Humans have lived in and around Palo Duro for about 12,000 years, using it as a place of water, shelter, and protection on the open plains. Settlers weren't about to leave this prime land uncontested, so the canyon became a battleground and eventually a ranching stronghold. Today, part of it is preserved as Palo Duro Canyon State Park, the kind of place that feels suspiciously like a national park without the label. And because it is a state park, it mostly flies under the radar, spared the crowds you might expect. So when you hike the trails, you'll have the place pretty much to yourself. The most iconic and best hike leads to the lighthouse, a 300-foot rock pillar rising from the canyon floor. On the canyon rim, there's an excellent visitor center with wide, sweeping views into the canyon. It's a good place to get oriented. You can learn about the human and geological history in the area and see displays on the shy animals that you'll probably never see during your visit. From the state park, we drive about 20 miles south to our first town, Happy, Texas. The sign welcomes you to a town without a frown, which makes me feel slightly nervous as I pull onto an empty main street. I've read enough Stephen King to know how this usually goes. I walk the red brick streets downtown, photographing historic buildings, and I'm happy to report that nothing supernatural happens. The town got its name from a nearby watering hole called Happy Draw. Cowboys were apparently happy to find water there, which makes sense, because if you've ever been to West Texas, you know it's dry. Whether the town lives up to its name is hard to say. I didn't see another human the entire time I was there. They may not frown, I simply don't know. 16 miles down the road, we arrive at Tulia. With about 5,000 residents, Tulia feels like what you'd expect from a Panhandle County seat. Wide, red brick streets, solid buildings with good bones, a stately courthouse anchoring the town square. Tulia is full of small town charm. Like this laundromat with a funny name. Maybe that laundromat should be in Happy. On the brick-paved square, an original Ozark trail marker still stands, a reminder that Tulia was once a major stop along a historic route, back when passing through meant staying the night to rest the horses. Most of the buildings on Main Street are abandoned, and as you drive around, you can really feel that this place used to be important, but it isn't any longer. Down the road, we run into Silverton, and according to the Texas Historical Society, Silverton has endured prairie fires, grasshoppers, dust storms, and cyclones. That feels biblical, almost personal, like God was trying to send a message. And he did send a message on May 15, 1957, when an F4 tornado obliterated the town, killing 21 people. The citizens rebuilt quickly, because that's what you do in the Panhandle. 16 miles later, we reach Quitaque, and it looks like the rapture happened here. The town is completely deserted and surprisingly picturesque. The downtown looks like a movie set waiting for the cast and crew to arrive. Now this place feels like a Stephen King novel about to happen. Quitaque, and let me know in the comments if I'm saying that correctly, gets its name from one of two stories. One version says the famous rancher Charles Goodnight believed it came from the indigenous word meaning end of trail and named the town accordingly. The other version claims the word referred to two nearby buttes that resembled piles of horse manure. I'll let you decide which one feels more accurate. There's a museum on Main Street that was closed when I visited, and there wasn't much going on, but the town is full of beautiful murals, and it was a very pleasant place to walk around, even though it was about 100 degrees outside. 14 miles from Quitaque, the land drops away again, and we arrive at Caprock Canyons State Park. Caprock feels wilder than Palo Duro, rougher, less visited. It's part of a different canyon system, but the landscape is similar and just as dramatic. About 300 bison roam the park, more than the population of many towns out here. And when we visited, we practically had the place to ourselves. Over 90 miles of trails crisscross the preserve, and it's designated as a dark sky park. That's what happens when no one is around. Halfway between Quitaque and Turkey is the aptly named Midway Theater. Sadly, this old drive-in is closed. Another piece of Americana lost to history. Our final stop is Turkey, and if you're still watching, you're in for a treat. Only about 320 people live in Turkey, but it has quietly become a destination. We visited the Hotel Turkey, built in 1927 and recently restored. On weekends there are live bands, two-stepping, and lots of enthusiastic singing, often from people who've imbibed festive beverages, which feels appropriate. Turkey is the adopted hometown of Bob Willis, the king of Western swing. He once worked here as a barber before forming the band the Texas Playboys, and the town has fully embraced his legacy, with a festival, a museum in the old school, monuments, and landmarks like Ham's Barbershop. On Main Street is the Gym Theater, which opened in 1928 and showed its first talkie in 1931, and Bob Willis was a frequent guest. Turkey was my favorite Panhandle town that we visited. Even though it was deserted on a weekday afternoon, I'd like to stay and see what the nightlife scene is like on a weekend. There seemed to be a real attempt in Turkey to play into the Old West charm and try to attract some visitors to this lonely town out in the middle of nowhere. Now you're welcome to return to the Interstate, but if you cross into the northeast corner of the Panhandle, you'll find the third smallest county seat in America, in 4 towns that probably shouldn't exist.